Great to have you join me on International Forum today's edition as we x-ray the Afghanistan crisis with special concerns on humanitarian and evacuation. We've been following the trends, what has been happening in Afghanistan and the Taliban takeover, and then the Kabul airport that is really crowded over concerns by foreigners to quickly leave the country. And that has actually been bringing issues. The G7 summit, which is being held right about now, to bring about the need to look into what is happening in Afghanistan, and of course the concerns to evacuate foreigners. US is involved, EU, UN, all involved to make sure that this really pans through. My name is Philip Omo Gyukbon, and I'm your anchor on today's edition. And joining me on this special moment, I have a social media commentator, and he is Uyosa Michael Edobo. Thanks for joining me, Uyosa.
Thank you, Mr. Philip, for having me. Thank you very much.
So, well, let's look at the background story of the Taliban, because the world was abruptly like on a standstill when they took over power in Afghanistan, and it was a big blow, like no country really expected it. That's going to pan out that way. So what are they made up of? What is the background story of the Taliban, and how do they come about in terms of the militancy that gave rise to the incident we have now?
Okay, thank you very much. You see, what is currently happening in the world is a shame, actually. But let's look at the preludes to this whole Taliban. If you remember very well, there was a war that took place in Afghanistan that was dated back in 1992. Between 1992 to 1996, there was a war that took place in Afghanistan. And this was what led to the victory of the Taliban taking over the government as of 1996. Now, when they took over the city, the Kabul city, which is the capital, so these Taliban, they were carrying out their military action. They are idealists. They are more like an Islamic movement, which has this kind of Sharia orientation within them. Now, and they are also very, very political. Now, in 1996, when they took over the government, they declared themselves as a new government, as the head of government, against the, what call it, the Afghanistan government.
Yeah, the legitimate government.
The legitimate government. So these people, they took over from 1996. They have been ruling the government, the Taliban.
Up to 2001.
Now, up to 2001. After the 9/11, September 2001, this happened, the World Trade Center. So the US, with the coalition from other countries, they came into Afghanistan, and that was where the problem of Afghanistan started from. So since 2001, they have been fighting a war. 2001 up to 2020, over 20 years of war.
Okay, let's see the role of the U.S. Why you take that background story.
Now, if you look at the United States came because there was a threat. 9/11, something happened which was very tragic in the world, and at that point in time, the kingpin which was responsible for that act was harboring in Afghanistan. So the U.S. saw it as an opportunity to go into Afghanistan to try as much as possible to be able to bring that Saddam bin Laden.
Yeah.
So this was the reason why the U.S. went into Afghanistan. And since then, U.S. have been trying to maintain decorum in the system. And over this time, these people, they are ideology. They have this Islamic ideology. They did not believe in this Western system which the U.S. is bringing into Afghanistan. They feel that this is their own system. They are nationalists. And if you don't forget, let's not, the world is tagging the Taliban as a terrorist organization right now. But let's look at the Taliban. The Taliban, they're just like, you can liken them to like an apple, which are agitating for their own. They want to govern their own country in their own way. And don't forget that 99.7% of the people living in Afghanistan, they are Muslims. They are Islamic people. Just only less than 0.03%, which are from other editions. So they felt like the U.S. cannot come into their government to start imposing on how they should run their government.
Okay.
So they have it. But the reason why they were proscribed was because they were not diplomatic in their process. And their own system was taking away, we call it human rights. And they were violating the human rights. And these were the concerns for the government.
Yeah.
They feel like these persons, we cannot allow these people to take over. So these have been a problem, and it's been a problem of over 20 years, over 2 decades. And it has been, and the reason why we are seeing what is happening today is just because the U.S. decided to pull out their troops. They felt like the Afghanistan, they feel that the U.S. government, like what Joe Biden said, he said, you cannot secure people who doesn't want to be secured. That was the reason why they pull out their troops. And immediately they pull out their troops, you see that the Taliban, they took over the government. That was what happened. That's the state we are right now.
Okay, but let's look at the evacuation concerns, for instance. Kabul actually is being heated up. The crowds at the airport, and some of the persons even climbing over the handles of the plane, the aircrafts, which reports have it that some died in the process. Now, the U.S. is giving a deadline for August 31st to evacuate its citizens, nationals, foreign nationals. Do you see that as feasible, looking at the present situation rocking Kabul?
You see, currently now, it's the evacuation process is not just only for foreign nationals, it's also for some highly vulnerable Afghan citizens also which are also trying to flee away from the country because they feel that the country is no longer bearable for them, safe for them. So they have to flee. And you have seen a lot of reports on the air. A lot of them have died, even in the airport, trying to flee. So this is going to be the evacuation. Like if you yesterday, the Indian government, they have flew over hundreds of persons out from not just their citizens, but also citizens of
Afghanistan. Yeah.
And if you also watch, the Iran are also making some effort. The Turkish government are also making some effort. And if you watch for the past 3 to 5 years, over 2 million people have been displaced, are taking refugees in neighboring countries like Iran, like Pakistan, and Turkey. So now, if you're looking at the evacuation process, it's going to take a while.
It's not just what you announce within a week and then you are done and dusted.
Except probably you are going to do it in a zigzag way. Because if you are going to follow the process of evacuation, it's going to take a longer period of time. Because right now, you're not only going to be looking at only the U.S. nationals, only the U.S. You're also going to be looking at the Afghanistans. Because people have to listen. They have a lot of people who wants to leave the system. So people they feel that it's totally unbearable for them. They cannot stay. So it's going to be a gradual process. And I'm not sure they'll be able to meet up with that deadline.
Okay, but the Taliban official said Kabul is safe, that the country is safe, and the whole aspect of the chaotic situations we're having at present is caused by the U.S.
Yes. You see, the ideology, we are looking at difference in ideology, you get. So now, if you look at most of the Islamic movements, militancy movements, they have a very parochial view about the way they see the world. They feel that, the world should be Islamized. This is their Sharia rule, which not everybody agree to that. So the Western world has a different view about that. So these are actually the problems. So now, anything the US do, they see like, it's against what they call it. That's why I said they are nationalists. The Taliban, if you look at the ethnic groups, we have over 8 ethnic groups in Afghanistan. These are various ethnic groups in Afghanistan. And like I said before, over 99% of them, they are Muslims. But there's still like 0.3% which are not Muslims.
Which also raises concerns. Because religious concerns are there.
Yes, that's why we're talking about
humanitarian concerns are there.
That's why we're not talking about cultural rights. Because they have the freedom to say, no, they want to associate. This is their freedom to associate. I don't want to be a part of this. I'm not in the Muslim community. Now, if you watch what happened during even the pandemic period, I was following the trade. You know that when they were even giving out some palliative, and they say, for those people who are non-Muslim communities, they could not even give them, they did not give them bread. They have to give only to the Muslim community. If you cannot even identify as a Muslim, it's a problem. So what happened to the 0.3%? Somebody has to cater for that. So there's already a form of marginalization. So those 0.3%, they are already seeing themselves that they are not part of the Afghanistan anymore. They have to leave because it's not that safe for them. And even those ones that even embrace Islam, now, if you watch very well, there's discrepancy between the male folks and the female folks and the children. Even the women who are Islams, they feel that the Talibanese, their own method of governance is very extreme. It's crude.
Violent.
So very violent. So they feel that it's not safe. I heard their president when they said everywhere is going to be safe, the Kabul city is going to no, it's not safe.
It's not safe.
Because they have taken over, they've ruled between 1996 to 2001. What did that? It was a problem. It was chaos. Their ground was like a terrorist ground. They were having foreign work on people who are international criminals. They were having them there. So
but reports have it that the officials are saying that there's going to be a softer side as compared to what they had then in 1990 since 2001, that they're going to have a softer side in terms of style of ruling. You know, that it's going to be with less militancy.
Yes.
But again, how do we take that to heart?
No, to be very honest, we have to still be very fair with them, and we have to be very patient, honestly. You see, now it's very less than 2 weeks or 3 weeks. 2 weeks that this whole incident take place. So now it is not we need to give them enough time for us to be able to judge them, extract them very well. So it's just to show. So let's look at in few months to come. Let's see how they are going to run the government. There's one thing we cannot take away from them. They are already in charge of the government already. They have taken over the government. Now let us see how they are going to run the government. So before we start judging them, let's see. And let's see how if they don't run the government, we cannot say, okay, we cannot compare this government with what happened then before. But right now, it's too early for us to start judging them.
Okay, let's take our mind back to the day it happened, where the president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, took to his heels. Now, on his tweets, on his posts on the social media, he did say the reason he did that was to save lives, because millions would have been dead, you know, in Kabul if he was to resist or wait for that terrible storm. But do you see that as heroic, as a leader?
You see, in any of decision you made, in an attempt to save lives, to avoid chaos, to avoid confusion, to avoid violence, is an heroic decision. Because don't forget that he's a president. Now, and being the president, he has enormous power. He has a lot of people with him. He has the military with him. He has the Afghanistan military with him. So now he can decide to exercise that power. He might win the fight. He might lose the fight. But being for the fact that there's a strategy which this military group will use. They don't fight directly. They attack civilians, homes. These are what they are. They attack maternities, hospitals.
Soft targets.
Soft targets. That's what they do. They use it as a hideout. Just like what happened between the Israel and the Pakistan. So if you watch, so these people, they don't fight physical. They don't have a physical fight. They start using civilians as their own backup in order to target all those vulnerable places. So if the government is to come out and fight these people, there's going to be a lot of casualties. So I think for me, the president did what was right in order to save the people. So he had to leave. Okay. So by leaving, he has actually surrendered to them, and by doing that, it has actually was saved the life of the citizen. Okay. So which is, for me, is a very heroic act.
Earlier in the conversation, you made mention of the act of the U.S. Pulling out its forces from Afghanistan. Yeah. Do you see that as commendable?
Yes.
Because some will say, well, why do that? Why not wait and fight for the Afghanistans, for a legitimate government that the U.S. have always stood for?
Yes, you see, let's go back to there was an accord, there was a peace accord in Doha, in Qatar, which was done, that was last year. Now, this peace accord was between the U.S. government and the Taliban. So, if you look at the peace accord, when I looked at the whole idea about it, there were a lot of elements that was taken away from the peace accord, which I saw that peace accord, I told myself that this thing is not going to stand in the long run. So now, you remember, during that peace accord, they gave the Taliban, they gave the U.S. government a list of 5,000, Talibanese fighters. And they asked them to release these Talibanese fighters to them. And in return, the Afghanistan government also gave the Taliban a list of 1,000 of their military forces that were ahead. So now, this raised a concern for the international community that you cannot start releasing these people. These people are these are federal criminals. You cannot start releasing. These are terrorists. So when you release this thing back to the Afghanistan, what are you creating? You are creating more problems in this thing. So by the end of the day, the U.S. still went ahead and struck that deal. At the end of the day, 5,000 Talibanese fighters were released back to the Talibanese. What happens when you have another additional 5,000? You are strengthening them. You are giving them more strength. So this was what happened. And the peace accord was not properly in place. So at the end of the day, they felt that you cannot trust a criminal. Just like what the Nigerian government is doing. They are saying repented Boko Haram. Is there anything that's repented Boko Haram? Somebody who have displaced people from their home, placed a lot of people in IDK camps. Then they came back and said they are repented, you are celebrating them. Then what's not the difference between a normal criminal who is on this?
So as reports have it, those persons have been de-radicalized.
No, let me tell you, it's so easy for the government. Now let me tell you, me and you were aware that most of the things that the government tells us is not actually true. That's the truth. Because you cannot tell me that somebody who has killed a full family, then you say he has been radicalized. Then that means somebody who went to go and steal. They say the one we are harboring in our prisons. Who are they? Are they better? Are these people Boko Haram that are repented Boko Haram? Are they better than these people? If you also give these people the same opportunity, they will be repented criminals, cultists. So you cannot say that. So for me, I think if you are a member of the Boko Haram and once you are caught, there's nothing like de-radicalization. It's a capital offense. You go for it. So that is it. So now, if you go back to the Talibanese, you cannot trust these Talibanese. You cannot trust them. You cannot trust the terrorists. Because first of all, they feel that it is their right. They feel that the US came forcefully to collect this. So now, when Joe Biden came into as president, he said, you cannot help someone who is not ready to be helped. So he felt like after they had that peace accord, he said, okay, it's time for them to withdraw their troops. But it was not true. You cannot trust the kind of Talibanese people. Now, immediately US withdrew their troops. It was less than virtually a week when they took over the city. Okay. So this is the state of where we are right now.
Okay. By what you just said, let's actually look at the scenario that will be faced by the Afghanistan's majority of them over the Taliban takeover. Now, these militants could be breaking into homes, though the Islamic authorities there did warn that the Taliban fighters shouldn't do that, shouldn't bring about issues of humanitarian crisis. Now, can we guarantee that from the Islamic Authority? And how can this be tackled in terms of guarding against the Taliban fighters breaking into houses and doing all sorts of things that they will want to do? What should be the concerns of the world leaders in this?
You see,
because it's very possible. It's impossible, practically impossible to evacuate all the citizens of Afghanistan.
As a matter of fact, there's so many Afghanistans have been repatriated back, even from the same Iran or from the same Pakistan. They are pushing them back to their country again. So it's a problem. So
that leaves us with an implosion.
Yes, now, and you know very well that we have close to 40 million Afghanistans in the country. There are 40 million persons in Afghanistan. Now, remember, initially, the Taliban, which called themselves the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan, the IEA. Now, these persons, they have declared themselves as a legitimate organization, which in charge of the government. They said in 1996 they were in charge of the government before the US came and displaced them, giving power back to the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. So now they themselves, they're the one in power now. They are the one running the government, and you cannot tell them how to run the government. So these people, they are very radical in their orientation. Their ways are very extremist. Their Sharia, there's nothing lenient about Sharia laws. These are harsh policies. This is so. That's not. This is the reality of what we are going to face. So now, the citizens are going to be at the mercy of these Taliban. That's the truth, because they have their own orientations. Now, in the Taliban, in their own ideology, women doesn't have a place. Women doesn't have a place. A system of government that feels that a woman does not have a place. You can imagine how, you can get a picture of how it looks like. So that's the situation we are facing right now. So now, like the G7 now, a lot of countries are meeting, the German, the France, and the USA. So they are going to meet.
Though virtually.
Virtually, yes. So let's see their resolution. Let's see how the international community is going to watch from afar. Let's see what is going to happen. Then from there, probably maybe they can make a proper resolution on what to do.
But again, let's look at the impossibility of a country or a government, ruling without really depending on other nations. It's practically impossible. What do you think? Because at present we have reports which says, not just suggest, that there is hunger in Afghanistan as we speak, alongside humanitarian crisis. Now, how can that be tackled? Because basically, if they say they want to exclude themselves from the world, it means that there'll be more hunger. So how should the G7 look at it as part of their agenda to really regulate the affairs of the Taliban government?
Yeah. First of all, you see, let me remind you, within the space of January to September, I told you that we had over 2 million Afghanistans. Now, from that January last year up to now, we have 4 million Afghanistan.
Double.
Who have been displaced, who have left the country, who have running for whatever asylum in various countries. That was a statistic by International Organization of Migration. Now, if you look at it now, they're coming back within the Afghanistan. There are a lot of issues. Now, over 65% of Afghanistan are living far below poverty level right now in Afghanistan. So now, if you look at the index, you can see that it's quite very alarming. People barely have 1 square meter to eat in Afghanistan right now. Now, people are running from various cities, various different cities to Kabul. There's chaos. Kabul seems to be the only place for all of them. Medical health care, even up to coronavirus test, the COVID-19 test, people, there were no facilities, there were no testing place in other locations in the full Afghanistan, apart from the Kabul, because that was the only safe place in the heart of Kabul. Right now, it has been taken over. What is now the fate of the citizen? So it's a total problem. So the G7 will have to really look at how can we help these people. Now, I think, first of all, they also have to have a proper, we'll call it, a dialogue with the Taliban. Because right now, these people are in power. So the only thing you can do, you can try as much as possible to strike a very fair deal that will put the lives of the Afghanistans in peace. That's the best thing. That's the best thing. Because right now, they are not the one dictating now. It is the Taliban. They are totally in control. So that is what I feel the G7 country should be able to meet and see if they can strike a deal with them. At least let normalcy return back. Even if they choose to run their government in their own Islamic way, the few people who feel probably they cannot stay. If there's a need for them to evacuate them, possibly, and seek asylum, this should be the resolution. Okay,
the U.S. government has threatened that anything that has to do with negatively impacting on their citizens in the country will be met with fierce response. What do you make of that threat? Is it mad?
You see, I love the U.S. because these are reasonable people. These are people who understand that the life of a citizen is very, very important, unlike our government of the day we have, where millions of people have been killed, thousands of people without this. So the U.S. government, they understand, when they said those words, they understood what they were saying. It was not just a mere word, it was fact they were giving to you. Because the life of an American citizen is very important, whether on international soil or even on local soil. So it's very important. So these things are, if you look at currently now, they are trying to evacuate their citizens first. Because first of all, before you start talking about other people, you have to talk about your citizens first. The life of American citizens, there are a lot of Americans in Afghanistan that are doing businesses there, that they are fighting their militaries there. So there are a lot of people there. So they have to first of all evacuate them. So should any threat happen to them, it's a problem for America. So they have to defend their own. So that's their current state. And what they said is actually true. Is there is no form of, they are not saying it for messing. They are saying because they actually mean what they're saying.
Okay, we look at the issues about the training of the Taliban forces. And as you agree with me, even late Osama bin Laden, had a lot of training in the U.S. And some say, well, this becomes the monster that was being trained by the U.S. What do you have to say in that regard?
Yes, you see, there are various, these people, these are coordinated. You see, the Taliban, they are a very resistive force.
Okay.
Now, don't forget that these people, they have spanned for over 30-something years. And currently, they are still standing. Now, don't forget that the whole ideology, they have people who are supporting them. They have funds. They have funding from various countries.
From organized
listen, yes,
entities.
Now, from organized. The ISIS, we are fighting Boko Haram. Do you think that Boko Haram has external support? Now, these Taliban forces, they have external support from various countries. Don't forget that Iran. Iran is a very strong country when it talks about the Islamic agenda. They are very strong. We have various countries that are supporting these people. Benet. Why the Zionists, which is the Israeli, they are fighting those the people from Palestine. Those people they have been there for over years. Because why? They are having external force. Because you cannot fight war without money. You cannot fight war without ammunition. Now, when I listened to, after they took over Kabul, I was listening to one of the commandants of the Taliban. He was saying that the America has all the RPGs and everything they strike from there. But now, with their own local this thing that they have, they are still able to switch it. Now, these people are proud of it because why? They are having external forces. They have people who are supporting them. So you cannot fight a war without money and without ammunition.
Okay.
That's the truth.
Thank you. In case you're just watching, it's International Forum, and we are looking at the Afghanistan crisis with special concerns on humanitarian and evacuation concerns. And I have been with a social media commentator, and he is Uyosa Edobo Michael. Thank you for taking our time.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
We're going to be having the issues about the tech, the tech companies also helping to reduce the activities of these militant Taliban forces, you know, using online, because most especially looking at the online business, online, a lot has been done there. And so if that can be gagged or that can be, you know, monitored, it can go a long way to also reduce the activities of terrorist attacks.
Yeah, that's
well,
true.
we're going to be looking at that after this break. Do stay with me. Thank you so much for taking our time to step with be a part of us on the show, International Forum. While we had a break, we had the opportunity to be joined by Honorable Fred Uyigwe, who is a public affairs commentator. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
All right. You've been following the trends, the issues arising from Afghanistan and the concerns over evacuation of foreigners, even the Afghanistans who are fleeing away from the country over security concerns. What do you make of this development?
Well, the Afghanistans who are now craving to leave the city or afraid to remain there have good reasons to be that fearful.
Yes, of
because as we have seen, there has been quite a lot of brutality in the place and violence. And the nation is still very much in a chaotic situation. There's no order yet, as yet. And the fear, given the deadline that the United States gave, which was
August 31st.
August 31st.
How feasible is that?
Yes, I think they have made significant improvement, because in the first 4 days of the evacuation exercise, they were able to evacuate some 13,000 of those who wanted to leave. Both Americans and the Afghanistans. Okay. Yeah. But just yesterday, they evacuated 18,000 yesterday alone. And their projection initially was that they only had 18,000 Afghans to evacuate. But that figure kept increasing. And, you know, at some point they said 22,000 and more. And about
so they just have to extend the deadline.
So, well, they are still trying to work within the deadline. I think they can accomplish all that they need to do within the deadline.
Okay.
Because if they evacuated 18,000 today, yesterday, they have demonstrated capacity to do the same. What a whole lot of people probably do not realize, which I think is probably happening, is that they are not necessarily evacuating everybody and taking them straight to the United States.
No, not of course.
You know, for them to be able to complete that exercise, they have to work with a neighboring friendly state, our ally. You know, dump them there first, and from there, sort them out. It's just that with that, there's also a humanitarian issue for all those who are also fearful that they will not survive the kind of violence that
by the Taliban.
Ensue. You know? And so those ones will try to, not being able to be evacuated along with those who had actually worked with the Americans and the Europeans, who want to go to the other neighboring states.
Yeah.
And those are not also usually, they are not very friendly states. I think it's only Pakistan that seems to have a good relationship.
So those other states are not safe zones.
Yeah, I mean, they are all extremist, totalitarian governments, you know.
Like the Turkish government.
Uzbekistan,
the Turkish government.
Iran and all of that. So
they're not in good state with
it's only Pakistan that seems to have
good relation.
A stable and moderate government.
Okay, so it seems the people are in a very hot crucible.
Yes.
So
the influx is going to be more towards Pakistan
than
towards the other 4 neighboring countries.
Okay, the G7 leaders, they are holding a meeting virtually as we speak right now on the need to really look at this humanitarian crisis, you know, and the need to evacuate people who feel unsafe in that region. Now, what do you see should top their agenda in terms of regulating the Taliban government, if they can be regulated?
There is no regulating the Taliban government. I mean, it wasn't expected that they would be able to overrun the country in such a short period.
Yeah.
But haven't done that. They have to, for now, I would say, watch the Taliban government, because we seem to think that the same Taliban government that was ousted 20 years ago is the same Taliban government that is there today.
Yeah.
Some of the soldiers there today, some of the Talibans, were not even born then.
Yeah.
Some were just, you know, little kids.
Yeah, little kids. Yeah.
They are mostly, if you look at them on TV, they are mostly in their 30s and maybe even 40s. So they were just lads, adolescents at the time. And they have had a taste of Western civilization.
So you mean they are stronger now?
So I think their mentality will be different from the mentality of those that were there 20 years ago.
Okay.
You know, they will be more accommodating because they have tasted civilization.
They'll be more accommodating?
Yeah,
is that what you mean?
Yes, I believe they will be more accommodating.
You believe? Okay, are you saying that?
Because during this period, during the period of the 20 years occupation, the United States and its allies, or our allies, developed a lot of facilities in the place, including international airport, developed residential facilities, subdivisions and master planned communities and all that. Those were the things that they didn't have.
Yeah.
But you see, the case of Afghanistan, actually, it's a very sad thing, because I was watching a documentary recently, and as far back as 1945 and 42, 43, 45, there was a lot of development going on there because they had a more stable government. There was a company from Boise, Idaho in the United States that went there to develop a canal and also a dam for the place. And then they had relationship, they watched Western movies and all of that. See, they needed that kind of exposure. But with the rising of the Taliban,
the
Talibans, all that was shut down.
Yeah.
That civilization was shut down, just like we have suffered here in Nigeria with the Boko Haram. I was reading an article just earlier today, that amongst those who are giving up arms and who are now defecting from the Boko Haram are those who want their children to go to school. But you know that the whole essence of Boko Haram was that Western education is bad, it's evil, you know, and it's a sin. But now they are realizing that they are being left out of the mainstream. See, the world is developing on a trajectory that everybody has to key into.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, it's either you join the bandwagon or you be left behind in the scheme of modern civilization. And that's where we're going. And that is what I believe the Afghans themselves have come to realize. So I believe what they are going to have is going to be different from what they had 20 years ago.
20 years
Okay.
ago, yeah.
Their main concern now will be getting recognition as a government.
As a government, yeah, and giving the government some legitimacy.
And
but will that be quickly possible?
It will depend on, like Americans have also said, and even the Europeans too, it depends on their actions, what they do, how they are quickly able to organize themselves together and present themselves to the international community as a ready government willing to work for the people and not for themselves. You know, it is very sad that after 20 years of so much investment in the place, the government that the United States and its allies tried to establish could not hold the country together.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
they had a great opportunity, much better opportunity than other nations that were colonized like Nigeria.
Yeah.
You know, here they were being funded from the occupiers, whereas in our own case we were being exploited. And not even given enough of our own resources to develop our own situation.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Okay. So let's look at Uyosa Michael. Let's look at the aspect of restricting their online activities, because majority believe these are terrorist groups or these are fierce-looking militants that need to really be curtailed or contained to some extent. Do you see one of the sanctions by the G7 summit, if there will be, as trying to control their online activity using the tech companies? Would that be in the right perspective in guarding and monitoring the activities of the Taliban movement?
Yeah, it's very possible. You cannot take away the role of the internet,
the tech companies,
from trying to keep the countries and nation within check. Do you understand?
Monitor conversations.
Yes, just like what happened in the Iran case, Iran, when the U.S. placed sanction on Iran. Now, and from Iran, you cannot send money out from Iran, except only with the allied countries, such as the United Arab Emirates, such as the Republic of Turkey.
Okay.
Now, money cannot leave Iran to major countries in the West. That's the sanction. Now, unlike we enjoy things like the MoneyGram and the Western Union, these things are not possible. They cannot do that in Iran. So, aside that, there are other sanctions that were placed on them. But now, if you are doing that, first of all, before you can place such sanction, you have to ask, it's only when I need something from you. It's only when I need your technology to run. That's the only way you can restrict me. If I'm operating, if I'm operating outside your technology, it means that you don't have control over me. Like now, if you watch, then when I was doing my program, then they taught us about, we were learning about operating system. Now, the reason why, what I'm telling you now is a fact. The German official, in the German government, German official, they don't use the Microsoft operating system. If you are a senior officer in the German government, you don't use that, because you know why? They feel that the Microsoft operating system is vulnerable. That the US, every information there, the US government can. So what they use, they use the European standard, which is the open, which they call Ubuntu. That's what they use. So now, Ubuntu is an operating system. It's a kind of operating system on its own. So it's an open source. So that's what the German government use. Is there. So you will not be wondering. So first of all, if the European comes together, probably the US and the European government say, okay, they want to place sanction on these people, they can decide to monitor activity of these people. Now, first of all, where are these people getting ammunition from? Their tech company that are creating this, they are producing this ammunition for them. That's the truth. So I told you that if you cut the source, most of these Talibans, most of these ISIS, most of these things, they are getting fundings. And where are the funding coming? They are the people who have similar agenda, like mine with them. They are funding them. So, but if there's a way we can actually curb these persons using the cyberspace, it's very possible. But first of all, we have to know what are these people running on, or what technology are they running from. So the people who use the technology, they should be able to rally around the people who use the technology that is running within the Middle East. Then they can be able to sanction these people and place them within check. That's the truth. Do you understand?
Okay.
So that's
well, let's look at this. Will sanctions work? you are a political figure, and so you know policies are made, you know, to control countries' relations with other countries, you know, and we know that a country cannot really survive on its own, or is it possible?
Sanctions do work.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the simple reason that it limits your productivity, okay? And it limits your ability to actualize your visions and your programs, okay? Afghanistan, to buttress what my brother here has said, Afghanistan has an opportunity to open up itself to the rest of the world so that it can be a player. You see, for you to be able to maximize your potential, you have to be a player in the global sphere. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if they are going to feel comfortable with being restricted or being eliminated from participating in the global technology direction, then they are going to be at a loss. You know, it is better to work with the nations because, look, you have to admit first what your limitations are technologically.
Yeah.
Like us in Nigeria, we're a consuming nation. We are not even what I would call an intermediate technology nation.
No.
You know? So if you're working with advanced technologies, you have to relate with them so that you can benefit from them.
Okay.
If for nothing, for the technical know-how, because you have an opportunity to acquire skills, to acquire technical know-how, and to begin, before you can even begin to think of investing or venturing into research, where you now begin to have an opportunity to invent things that you can patent.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't think it would be a good thing to sideline Afghanistan
Okay.
from social media.
Okay.
It will not be a good thing because what the world is beginning to realize is that this intelligence, this knowledge, it's not exclusive to any one group of people. Because you are never going to be able to tell where the next genius that is going to transform is going to come from. So, and that is what a lot of underdeveloped nations do not seem to appreciate. But the developed nations do. What is happening right now with this evacuation is that the people they have trained, the people Americans have trained in technology and in administration and in other advanced skills are the ones they are evacuating from the place. So it's a great brain drain to Afghanistan and brain gain to the United States.
Yes, of course.
You know, I mean, if you can say, well, they have lost $2 trillion, you know, in attempting to stabilize and set up a stable system in the place. But one way too of recouping that, it's getting people who have been trained into your own system. That is exactly too what happened after the Second World War.
Okay, so you mean by this
You know?
arrangement is going to be a plus for the U.S. government?
It's
and the allied...
It's a plus for the United States government.
Okay.
China is not China because China has so much population. China always had that huge population, okay, which is still growing exponentially. But China, when China woke up to its potential and began to educate its people to a higher degree than they used to, then China's economy began to blossom. And what could have helped Afghanistan more would have been, and what should still help them, would be for them to appeal to those who have fled the country to come back and be sincere in that plea for them to come back and help develop the country. It's the same situation we are in Nigeria.
But can they guarantee their security? Can they guarantee that the human rights abuses won't really be intense?
It is it is in their actions that one will be able to judge what they can do.
Okay.
Okay, because nobody lives in a bubble anymore. Everybody we are all now in a global village.
Of course, yes.
We are all exposed, and they are observers, reporters, you know, monitoring what's going on, civil society organizations, monitoring every nation, exactly how the governments run. So it's not something that you can hide.
Okay. Okay, thank you for taking our time to be part of this. But in the final analysis, Michael happens to be a cybersecurity expert, and let's look at again the benefit that the country, Nigeria, our country, we get from this, because we talk about evacuation concerns, and there's this impression that are Nigerians not in Afghanistan? so shouldn't we think in this direction of what are the concerns of the government in terms of finding evacuation-wise, you know, getting Nigerians back to the country? Or should we seem that or believe that we don't have Nigerians in Afghanistan? What's your impression in that?
First, you know, there's always this general statement that says Nigerians are everywhere.
So there must be Nigerians.
So there must be Nigerians over there, certainly, but
Okay.
it might be in a very few numbers. But the thing is that when you are talking about, you know, the issue of Nigeria is very laughable most times, because this is we are looking at a government who, even we are looking at the people, the internal citizens. There are a lot of issues. Now we have a lot of people even in ID camps.
There's no country that you don't have issues.
No,
so
no.
It's not peculiar to Nigeria.
You are looking at the degree.
So black sheep.
No, we are looking at the degree.
Okay.
Do you understand? We are looking at the degree. You know, everybody, there's vulnerability in every system, but we are looking at the degree at which is vulnerability. Now, in Nigeria, we are talking about a country whereby we have a high level of insurgents.
Yeah.
People are being displaced from their home. People are being displaced. A country whereby the governor's life is even under threat. You know, and we are talking about Nigerians over evacuation. Now, true, it's simple. If we have Nigerians, you can tell there are a lot of statistics over, and you see on the internet. A lot of Nigerians are dying in various countries that are not even having insecurity as high as Afghanistan.
So what are you saying? So, you're saying that we are not stable enough
I don't think
to help out in this situation.
I don't think Nigeria is even there. Well, you want to help. You want to bring in 15,000 Afghanistan into Nigeria when we have millions of people who are in IDP camps, who are going to be taken care of. So the truth is that let's be very realistic with ourselves. So it's not really feasible.
Okay.
Even if we are doing it just to show for the public figure, for the public concern. But true be told, we have enormous problem in our country enough.
Okay, let's get your final words, Fred Uigwe, on the vulnerable people that are vulnerable. They are actually women and children.
As a matter of
so let's get your final words.
As a matter of responsibility, administrative or political responsibility.
Okay.
You cannot have your citizens in a danger zone anywhere in the world and not be concerned.
Yes, of course.
And not try to do something about their safety.
Yeah.
If indeed they are Nigerians there, and I can tell you for free that, of course, they are Nigerians there.
Of course, they should reach out to Nigerians.
I know some who left from the United States. But my only belief is that even the Nigerians there will not want to come back to Nigeria. Why would they want to come back to Nigeria?
In spite of the challenges of insecurity.
In spite of the challenges of the place, except they do not have somewhere else to go.
That's the truth.
For one thing, I do know.
They will prepare to be evacuated elsewhere.
Because they were well paid.
Okay.
I remember a particular guy who wanted to go to Afghanistan because Americans were recruiting. They were recruiting not just Americans in the United States, but they were recruiting other nationals to go serve in Afghanistan, not as military, but as civilians. Okay, in civilian capacities, as cooks, as drivers, and stuff like that. And if he did well, even as administrators, purchasing officers and stuff like that. And there was this particular guy who wanted to go because he said some of his friends, some of his Nigerian friends had gone. But they were telling him, well, if you go, what we want you to do is to be able to drive truck from point A to point B. And then there was the problem of IEDs. They provide the
explosive devices.
And so he didn't want to go. He said he wanted to work in the kitchen.
Of course, yes. To keep a safe
where there was no risk. You know, so that's about, I mean, that's one Nigerian can tell you that.
Yeah.
But after a while, I didn't see him anymore. I guess he eventually went.
Okay,
You know?
okay.
So I believe that.
Your final words on this?
Yes. My final words that Afghanistan has a new opportunity, you know, to remake themselves.
Yeah, and launch out to the world.
And launch out, because they would have seen what has become of United Arab Emirates, which Doha, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi. You know, they have great cities now that were not there just 40 years ago, but they have taken the time to moderate their religion and to develop the place.
Okay.
And that is an example for all extremists and all fundamentalist religious organizations and, you know.
Okay, thank you. Your final words on this, Michael, will you say?
Okay, first of all, it's a saddening story in Afghanistan currently, but my heart's still with them, and I wish that the new government, which is the Islamic Emirates of Afghanistan, which is the Taliban's, I wish that they understand that taking over the government is a step, but the world is watching.
The world is watching.
So they should be liberal in their approach into governance, so that the world can see them from a different perspective. Okay. Because right now, the world does not believe, does not trust in them. So they have to prove to the world that they can actually lead the government and in a very peaceful way. Okay. So we hope that they are receptive in their approach, so that they can actually attract a lot of foreigners even to the country.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Michael Edobo. Michael Edobo is an engineer and a cybersecurity expert, outside being a social media commentator. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And of course, Fred Oyigwe is a politician and erudite at that as a public affairs analyst, and it's quite awesome to have you been part of the show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, my name is Philip Omo Gupon. We do this on another round, and be safe, ensure you do things that will not jeopardize your health. Goodbye.